March 3rd, 1961, 6:15 in the morning. Bumpy Johnson woke in cell 47 of D Block and saw words painted in red industrial paint on the concrete wall above his bed. "Negros don't run this place." The message was still wet, dripping down the gray stone like fresh blood. White guards had come in the night while he slept, left their challenge, their test of his influence, their attempt to destroy the reputation he had built inside these walls. They wanted him to wake up humiliated. They wanted the other prisoners to see him weakened. They wanted to prove that no matter what power Bumpy Johnson held in the streets of Harlem, inside Sing Sing prison, white authority still ruled absolutely and without question. Bumpy lay there for 3 full minutes without moving. His eyes traced each letter, each drip of red paint running down to his pillow. He could hear the breathing of men in neighboring cells, could feel them waiting, watching through the bars to see how their leader would respond to this public insult. The air felt electric with held breath and suspended possibility. Some expected rage, others feared submission. All of them understood that what happened in the next few moments would determine whether Bumpy Johnson remained the uncrowned king of Sing Sing's underworld or became just another broken prisoner whose authority crumbled under the weight of institutional racism. But Bumpy did not move yet. He remained perfectly still, letting his mind work through the implications, calculating responses, measuring consequences. This was not random vandalism. This was a declaration of war from Captain Harold Becker and his loyal crew of guards, all Southern white men who believed in their bones that black prisoners should know their place, should accept their subordination, should never dare to build alternative systems of power inside the American prison system. They had tried everything else to break him. Solitary confinement for 60 days without cause, planted drugs to extend his sentence, revoked visiting privileges that brought protests from his Harlem community right to the prison gates. Nothing had worked. So now they resorted to psychological warfare, public humiliation, an attack on the one thing Bumpy valued more than freedom itself, his dignity and the respect it commanded. Slowly, deliberately, Bumpy rose from his bunk. He dressed in his standard-issue orange uniform with the same calm precision he brought to every morning. His face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, no emotion whatsoever. He buttoned his shirt. He smoothed his collar. He walked out of cell 47 and into the corridor where 340 men were lining up for morning count, their eyes all tracking him, watching for any sign of weakness or fury. The guards stood at their positions, batons ready, expecting some kind of emotional explosion. Captain Becker watched from the observation tower with a smile on his face, confident that his plan had worked, that he had finally found the way to break the man who had become too powerful, too influential, too dangerous to the racial order Becker believed was natural and necessary. During morning count, Bumpy stood in line like every other prisoner. He called out his number when prompted. His voice was steady, clear, unremarkable. The guards exchanged confused glances. Where was the rage? Where was the breakdown? Becker leaned forward in his tower, his smile fading into a frown. This was not the reaction he had anticipated. He had expected Bumpy to fight back immediately, to lose control, to give them legal justification for punishment, for extended solitary, for transfer to a worse facility. But Bumpy gave them nothing. He simply stood there, participated in the routine, showed no acknowledgement of the red letters bleeding on his cell wall. Then, when the last number was called, when silence fell over the prison yard like a held breath before a storm, Bumpy Johnson walked to the center of the courtyard. He climbed onto one of the metal tables used for meals during outdoor privileges. He stood there, 5 feet 8 inches tall, but seeming to tower over everyone present. 340 prisoners turned toward him as if pulled by magnetic force. 20 guards gripped their batons tighter, sensing something building but unable to stop it. The morning sun cast Bumpy's shadow long across the concrete, and in that moment he looked less like a prisoner and more like a general surveying his army before battle. Bumpy's eyes found Captain Becker in the watchtower. He stared directly at him, let the white officer see the controlled fury burning behind his calm exterior. Then Bumpy opened his mouth and shouted 5 words that would echo through American prison history. 5 words that transformed individual humiliation into collective action. 5 words that proved dignity was worth fighting for no matter the cost. "They gonna pay for this." His voice cut through the morning air like a knife through flesh. It bounced off concrete walls and iron bars and settled into the hearts of every man standing in that yard. It was not a question. It was not a plea. It was a declaration of war, a promise, a prophecy. And in the 3 seconds of absolute silence that followed, everyone present understood that something irreversible had just been set in motion, that the normal order of prison life had been shattered, that there would be no going back from this moment. What happened next unfolded with the speed and inevitability of an avalanche. One prisoner flipped his meal table. The metal crashed against concrete with a sound like thunder. Then another table went over, then 5, then 20, then 50. The sound multiplied and echoed and became a roar of metal in rage and resistance. Plates flew through the air. Serving trays became weapons. Chairs were torn from their bolted positions and thrown against walls. The chaos did not build gradually. It exploded instantly, as if every man had been waiting for permission to release years of accumulated fury at a system designed to strip them of humanity. The guards tried to respond, but they were vastly outnumbered. 20 officers against 340 enraged prisoners. Alarms began wailing. Emergency calls went out for reinforcements. But D Block had already been lost. Prisoners set mattresses on fire. They smashed windows, they ripped pipes from walls and created geysers of water that flooded the corridors. They transformed their living quarters into a war zone. And through it all, Bumpy Johnson stood on that metal table in the center of the yard, arms crossed over his chest, watching the destruction unfold with the calm satisfaction of a chess master who had just executed a perfect strategy. He did not participate in the violence. He did not need to. His 5 words had been enough to light the fuse. Director Morrison received the emergency call at 6:38 in the morning. He was home eating breakfast with his wife when the phone rang, and the voice on the other end told him Sing Sing was in full rebellion. He arrived at the prison 15 minutes later to find helicopters circling overhead, state police mobilizing in the parking lot, and reporters already gathering at the gates. News of a racial uprising in one of New York's most notorious prisons spread faster than the fires burning in D Block. Morrison rushed inside, demanded a situation report, and received the grim assessment. 340 prisoners had taken complete control of D Block. Damages were estimated at over $280,000, and the ringleader had only one demand. Morrison made his way to the prison yard under heavy security. Through the chain-link fence and razor wire, he could see the destruction. Smoke rose from burning mattresses. Water poured from broken pipes. Glass littered the ground like diamonds in the morning light. And in the center of it all stood Bumpy Johnson, still on that metal table, arms still crossed, looking directly at Morrison with eyes that held no fear and no willingness to compromise. The director ordered a megaphone brought to him. He raised it to his lips, cleared his throat, and asked what it would take to end this. Bumpy's response was simple, direct, and non-negotiable. Captain Becker and the 5 guards from his shift, transferred, today, or this continues for weeks. His voice carried clearly across the yard despite not using any amplification. Morrison tried to reason with him, explained that there were procedures for disciplinary action against guards, union rules, legal processes that had to be followed. Bumpy listened without expression, then replied with words that cut through every bureaucratic excuse. Director, I didn't ask for terminations. I asked for transfers. And regarding procedures, you should have considered those before allowing racists to paint hate messages in cells while prisoners slept. Your choice now is simple. Either those 6 men leave today, or I burn everything. For 19 hours, Sing Sing remained in complete lockdown. No prisoner accepted food. No one followed orders. Small fires continued to be set in trash bins. The damage estimate climbed past $280,000. National newspapers picked up the story. Racial rebellion at Sing Sing read headlines across the country. Civil rights organizations issued statements of support. The governor's office called Morrison every hour, demanding resolution. Television cameras captured footage of smoke rising from the prison walls. What had started as one painted message in one cell had become a national incident that exposed the racial tensions simmering inside American correctional facilities. Inside his office, Captain Harold Becker watched his world collapse. He had believed that humiliating Bumpy Johnson would weaken him, would show the other prisoners that their leader was not untouchable, was vulnerable to white authority. Instead, his plan had produced the exact opposite effect. Every black prisoner in Sing Sing now saw that painted message not as an attack on one man, but as an attack on all of them. Becker had not broken Bumpy Johnson. He had unified him with 340 men who were willing to destroy the prison, rather than accept continued racial humiliation. The guard sat alone in his locked office, listening to the chaos outside, understanding that he had made a catastrophic miscalculation. At 6:30 in the evening, after consultations with the governor, union representatives, and legal counsel, Director Morrison made his decision. He called Becker to his office. The captain arrived expecting support, expecting Morrison to stand by his guards against prisoner demands. Instead, he heard words that felt like a death sentence to his career. "Harold, you and your 5 guards are being transferred to Attica, effective immediately. Pack your belongings. You leave tonight. You have 2 hours. Becker tried to protest, started to argue about unfairness and proper procedures, but Morrison raised his hand for silence. "You caused a national disaster. You painted a racist message in a prisoner's cell and provoked a rebellion that has cost this state hundreds of thousands of dollars and immeasurable damage to its reputation. Be grateful I'm not terminating you entirely." Morrison walked personally to D Block. He carried a megaphone and the weight of political reality. 340 prisoners watched from windows and behind barricades as he approached the fence. He raised the megaphone and his voice boomed across the yard. "Bumpy Johnson, the 6 guards responsible for the vandalism in your cell are being transferred today. The bus leaves in 90 minutes. You have my word. Now I need these men to return to order." 340 pairs of eyes turned from Morrison to Bumpy, waiting for their leader's response, ready to follow whatever signal he gave. Bumpy climbed down from his table slowly. He walked to within 3 meters of Director Morrison, only chain-link fence and razor wire between them. His voice when he spoke was quiet but clear. "Director, are you a man of your word?" Morrison met his gaze. "I am." Bumpy nodded once. "Then show me those guards boarding that bus. When I see them leave, when my men see them leave, order returns." Morrison signaled to his deputies, "Bring Becker and the others." At 7:45 in the evening, under harsh floodlights and the watchful eyes of 340 prisoners pressed against windows and bars, Captain Harold Becker and his 5 guards walked across the prison yard, carrying their personal belongings in canvas bags. They climbed aboard a white transfer bus with New York State Corrections painted on the side. Becker looked up one final time and saw Bumpy Johnson watching from his cell window, arms crossed, face expressionless. The humiliation was complete. A black prisoner had forced the removal of 6 white guards from a maximum security facility. The power dynamic that had governed American prisons since their inception had been inverted, if only for this one extraordinary moment. When the bus passed through the prison gates and disappeared into the darkness of Route 9, Bumpy turned from his window to face the men of D Block. He did not shout. He did not celebrate. He simply spoke in his normal voice and let his words carry through the sudden quiet. "You saw what happened here today. You saw what we can accomplish when we stand united. They tried to break us with paint on a wall. We responded with action that made them remove their own people. But now we return to order. We proved our point. We showed them we cannot be humiliated without consequence. Now we show them we are disciplined enough to know when to stop." The applause that followed was not wild or chaotic. It was measured, respectful, the sound of men who understood they had just participated in something significant. In the following days, maintenance crews painted over graffiti throughout D Block. They repaired broken windows, replaced damaged pipes, cleaned smoke stains from walls, Bumpy made only one request, that the message in his cell be the last one covered. Leave it visible for 3 more days. Let everyone remember why we did what we did. So the red letters remained. Negroes don't run this place. No longer an insult, but a monument to resistance, visible evidence of an attempt at humiliation that had backfired spectacularly. Prisoners walked past cell 47 and saw those dripping red letters, and remembered the morning Bumpy Johnson turned degradation into revolution with 5 words. On the 4th day, a maintenance worker covered the message with fresh white paint. It took 3 coats to completely hide the red. Bumpy watched the process from his bunk, arms behind his head, a slight smile on his face. The paint might cover the words, but it could not erase what had happened. Everyone in Sing Sing would remember. The story would spread to every prison in the country, carried by transferred inmates and guards, amplified by newspapers and civil rights organizations. From San Quentin in California to Rikers Island in New York, prisoners would hear about the man who stopped an entire institution with 5 words, who turned a racist attack into a demonstration of collective power. The March 1961 rebellion at Sing Sing entered the history books as a significant moment in the American prison civil rights movement. Bumpy Johnson had not merely defended his personal dignity. He had defended the dignity of every black man incarcerated in American facilities. He had demonstrated that even inside concrete walls and iron bars, even stripped of formal power and legal protection, human beings could resist dehumanization when they stood together. The lesson resonated far beyond prison walls. It connected to larger struggles happening across the country, to lunch counter sit-ins and freedom rides and voter registration drives. Bumpy Johnson might have been locked away from those movements, but in his own way, within his own circumstances, he was fighting the same battle. Bumpy served 4 more years at Sing Sing after that morning. Never again did a guard openly challenge him. Never again did anyone attempt to humiliate him with racist vandalism or arbitrary punishment. Cell 47 of D Block became legendary within the prison culture, referred to simply as the cell where it started. New prisoners arriving at Sing Sing would hear the story from veterans, always told with reverence and careful attention to detail. They would learn about the morning Bumpy woke to find red letters on his wall. They would learn about his 3 minutes of silence. They would learn about him climbing onto that metal table in the yard. And they would learn the 5 words that changed everything, words that every prisoner at Sing Sing could recite from memory. They gonna pay for this. Years later, after Bumpy was released and returned to Harlem, after he resumed his position in the underworld hierarchy of New York, the story of the rebellion continued to be told inside Sing Sing. Guards used it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating prisoner solidarity. Prisoners used it as inspiration, proof that resistance was possible even in the most controlled environments. The red-painted message became mythological, growing slightly larger in each retelling. The letters always a bit more dramatic, Bumpy's response always a bit more legendary. But the core truth remained unchanged. One morning in March 1961, a black man refused to accept humiliation, and his refusal sparked a rebellion that forced an American prison to acknowledge a simple truth. Dignity is not granted by institutions. It is claimed by individuals who refuse to surrender it, no matter what price must be paid. The paint on Cell 47's wall stayed white for the remainder of Bumpy's sentence, and for decades after. Other men lived in that cell, slept in that bunk, woke beneath that ceiling where red letters once bled their message of hate. None of them knew the exact spot where the words had been painted. The concrete gave no indication of what had happened there. But the story persisted, passed down through generations of Sing Sing prisoners, each telling slightly different but always recognizing the essential elements. A racist attack, a calculated response, 5 words that became a battle cry, 340 men standing together, and 6 guards being driven away in a white bus while a black prisoner watched from his window with his arms crossed and victory written silently on his face. That was the story. That was the legend. That was the morning Bumpy Johnson taught Sing Sing Prison that some men cannot be broken, no matter how much power you hold over their bodies, because their dignity lives somewhere institutions cannot reach, somewhere paint cannot cover, somewhere that remains theirs absolutely and forever. 5 words proved it. They gonna pay for this. And they did.